Hi everyone, my name is Ruchi Gautam. Today I'm going to be talking about privacy concerns in a connected car ecosystem. Let's start with the very basics here. What is privacy? Privacy is essentially, there are all legal definitions out there, but in the very simple terms, privacy is my right to be left alone. It's having the decision, being in control to basically know how your personal information will be used. Who do you want to share it with? So, when we talk about personal information, that would be anything which can be used to uniquely identify you. Your date of birth, your email address, your political views, or sensitive personal information like your photo ID, your biometrics, anything which has which is very personal to you and can uniquely identify an individual by itself or in the combination. Next, we have this slide where we are talking briefly about the recent privacy and security incidents which have happened over in the automotive sector. There are a few glaring figures out here. First and foremost, there were about 200 automotive cyber incidents reported in year 2020 alone. This is in stark contrast to the statistics we have for 2019, where there were only about 93 incidents reported. Next up is 36% of the incidents in 2020 involved data breaches and privacy breaches. So this is where our focus area is. That earlier, where the focus was more about, cybersecurity, getting the cyber hacks, securing your systems, ensuring privacy around your data security triad. Now it also has an implications from the privacy perspectives as well. So this is what the threat scenario at this point looks like. And then the top threats, let's say, which kind of hit the automotive sector, is your web server attacks, your prone vulnerabilities in the inherent vulnerabilities, I'd say, in the OT systems. So that is where is the most high severity risk which are lying and which have been capitalized by hackers uh, more than once, I'd say. So now, let's probably, we living in a very connected world. We are sharing a lot of our data out there. Typically when we use our phones and you look up your Google history, it shows you all the latest, sites which you have visited, which all places you visited so far, how many air miles cards you have generated in last few weeks. And this is getting all these data from your search, from your telecom operator. And so a lot of data about our own personal data is out there. So let us go through this example to understand what a connected vehicle ecosystem look like and how it is impacting our privacy and what is the future of connected car. Let's go through a typical day for a Mike. A Mike is a school teacher, and living in these pandemic times, he generally drives down to pick food from his favorite restaurant. Now, that once he's in his car, now his car is talking to all these devices he had at home. Uh, those are home intrusion devices, all these alarms uh, for him to get to know if there is any burglary or any theft happening back in the house, home video surveillance, he has a baby back home, he wants to, you know keep monitor, how things are in the nursery. uh, then, if he has car theft alarms to report, if there is any theft which is happening, if he meets with an accident, then there are systems which kind of report back to the accident reports. So all these devices are, you're continuously in contact with all these devices, even while you're away from home. Now, as he moves on further on the road, he is coming to an area where there are a lot of shops and restaurants. Now, as he's passing by, all these shop owners start to give him these notifications on, customized offers. There is a sale going on based on his past history. He's shopped with them before, and now that combined with the location data they have as his car is passing by, they can give him more customized offers. So he can see all these menus on his in his car from the comfort of his car. All these different offers are popping up. Uh, he moves further ahead on the road, and he unfortunately gets a flat tire. Now, typically, like in back old days, you would call some kind of a road assistance, but now the car has an automated sensor, and it picks up the input right away that they have a flat tire, and it automatically sends out the alert to the road assistance. No, road assistance folks arrive, they're fixing his tire, and he's still sitting comfortably in the comfort of his car, listening to his favorite Spotify playlist. So all of this is happening without any physical, interaction from him. And so if you look at this, he basically has no idea, what data is being shared with these people, how his data is being used, and what is, the basic life cycle around the data. And all of this information is based on his geolocation. Right from that very parameter of his geolocation, they can also determine now he's had this flat tire, and then different insurance companies can analyze his, driving patterns. He has a dash cam out, and where whatever he's talking gets recorded, and his driving patterns get analyzed, how often he's braking, is he a rash driver, how many speeding tickets has been issued to him. So all this connection between what the government has and the insurance agencies have. So all this data is, and there's a lot of profiling which is happening on this data. And there's no way for Mike to know how basically his data is being used, who it is being shared to, how it, even for the fact how it is being collected from him. So this example, tells us a lot about, like, we might not realize, but then there's a lot of personal information which for us, which is going out there. And at all the time, pretty much, this is something which we do realize that we need these things for the ease of convenience, but having a control over how your data is being used is somewhat where the concern of the privacy kind of comes in. This slide gives us a more, I'd say, a deeper view of what are the different aspects of connected vehicle ecosystem, what types of data it deals with: your vehicle and safety data, your driving patterns, your location, your personal information, your health information, and then all the consumer insights like we spoke about. Insurance providers are using this data, and then your shop owners are pushing you these customized offers. Typically, the communication channel is the wireless connectivity, but then there are different data sources. The data is coming from the telematics, from telemetry, from the infotainment platforms, from the GPS units, from your onboarding sensors, to even your smartphones, your smartwatch. All of these. So there's no boundary for us any longer. Those network boundaries are kind of disappearing. And this data flow is shared with your equipment manufacturer, and it is going to the government, it is going to the third party. So there are a lot of unknown. This is a lot complex system than it from where the traditional days from where we started. And now, as we're moving into the age of Internet of Things, we are looking at connected cars, we're looking at autonomous cars. Privacy has kind of become the focal point of discussion. Okay, now let's look into what all kind of data, personal data specifically, is this uh, is this car collecting for us. So, you have a camcorder, which is an electronic data recorder. They capture if you get into any accidents, and these recordings can then be used to claim insurance. But what we don't realize is that they are recording every set of the conversations. Until and unless you don't have your microphone turned off, they also record all the conversations you are having within the car. And next, then if you're visiting any hospital or any trauma center, any of these sensitive areas, it stores your location, it stores your navigation history, right from the time to what is the physical location, to what is your driving pattern, to how much distance you generally travel. And it can map out quite a extensive profile of a user based off on these informations. Also, it is also, since this car is connected to the multiple electronic home devices, it gives out your details like where is your office located, who's the typical your family member information, uh, and so forth. So this is typically is the personal data which gets collected for you without you even realizing when you're traveling in the car. Let's talk about how the collected personal data is used. Uh, One of the most, I'd say, uncontrolled use of the data is, when this data now gets shared with these third parties or from these OEMs. Typically, when you're going in, you're buying the car, you're signing this policy, and there's this small checkbox right there, and which says agreeing to terms and conditions. And yes, and does not specifically list out how your data is being used. So what your data is being used for is to upsell, to generate these algorithms that are so complex for us to predict that, based on now you're driving, that's how often you brake, this much time you go for a maintenance check, this is where, your periodic cycle of your service looks like. This data can help insurance companies to, you know, make a customer profile, and then that's where your insurance premiums can start going up. So this is predatory marketing and manipulation. They start upselling you more products. You typically go out there, you have a flat tire, and then there's a road assistance folks coming in fixing your tires. And then, next thing you know, they're saying, oh, they have a problem with your cooling system. And then, uh, something, the battery is, not operating at its optimum. And different other things which you probably never know exist in your cars, and all those problems suddenly surface. Uh, and they can tell all this because they have access to plethora of our data. Then car manufacturers, what they can do is, they can use this data to direct your cars right to the, a more preferred maintenance shop, or even build an autonomous fleet. We have heard about Tesla hack, where, it started off with driver suddenly not having is no longer in control of his car. What if something like this can be materialized, and an hacker is able to generate an autonomous fleet, thus compromising, the central so monitoring system itself. Another use of the misuse of the data, I'd say potentially would be advertisement. You are getting all these location specific ads, location preferences, which kind of influence our shopping behaviors and our patterns. So, a customer is no longer neutral, and you're without even knowing, it's an unbiased, unconscious influence which is being pushed off because you have all this information being pushed out to you. And the decision which we make is kind of then influenced in a way. So let's understand the key privacy risks. One of the major privacy risks which we see around here is the high exposure. All of these things are so connected. If there is an incident which is happening, it's not a standalone incident. Your device is also connected to your uh, systems back home, and somehow if your vehicle gets compromised and an attacker is able to intercept all these communications with all these peripherals you're able to make, so the impact of this privacy breach is much more substantial. Next is the uncontrolled data flow. Once the information is out of your bounds, once you've signed on that uh, privacy policy and you don't know how your data is collected, who it is being shared with, there's always a situation where we call a function creep, because now you no longer have the ownership around it. You cannot tell where is your data flowing to, how is that being used. And then there's a very large attack vector, because when we talk about OT systems, traditionally cybersecurity started picking up, and data security is more focused around web-centric attacks, and OT and IoT systems are not as adequately covered. So there's a lot of attack vector out there for hackers, which they can use to basically exploit the system. So there's a misuse of your location data, which can potentially be used to, survey the individuals or give them a more targeted approach. And then there's a part of the legal framework. The privacy regulations have been around for a while, but they were focused on personal data security. But now, with more of the OT threat surfacing, new laws have started coming in the picture, which also do take into account the machine-to-machine communication and any personal data which is being put out there as a part of these interactions. Last but not the least, we'll briefly touch upon the driver's safety. We're all talking about, securing a system, ensuring your privacy, but this works hand in hand with ensuring that the drivers, the ones who are the end users, the ones who operate these systems, are more well informed. They use it as per what would be an acceptable use. So for us, it's important to understand our car, whenever you're going out buying it there, research, look about the product, take some time, go through that user manual, see all those features, just try to understand, get comfortable around what data is being collected. And when you're buying, you know, look for the reasons, that justification. Why do they need data? Limit the data to its necessary use. Give consent only, based on what is needed. You can opt out. Look for those check boxes where you can opt out. So this is the part of where you gotta have to understand. You gotta have to be aware of the things, how it's flowing. Next comes the avoiding. One of, I'd say, the best way to avoid any privacy breaches is to not enter very accurate locations. You want to go to your house, right? Enter and the address is 2469 unit. Just enter your neighbor's address, or maybe a landmark which is uh, more prominent out there. In that sense, you can also reach the location, your destination, but you will also be able to maintain the confidentiality of the data, the exact office addresses, the exact home addresses. Those need not go there. Probably just putting out the building's name or nearest landmark, coffee shop. That can be one other way to circumvent the disclosure of this information. Next up, let's let's making a habit of deleting the navigation history from time to time. Uh, this is specifically more important in the cases, when we are, reselling our vehicle or returning a rented car. You don't want to return a car from which the other person can absolutely make out from where you went, what was your trip like, where you stayed over, what were your stops. So you do not want that kind of information to get out. Uh, and last but not the least is being aware of your rights. Privacy for most of the people, when we are buying the vehicle, what we look at is, okay, we want to buy this, we want to use all the features, but we do not take into account that there is a lot of third parties involved here. You're sharing this information with the manufacturer, with all these ride sharing applications, then renting applications. Now we have destination assist, which you can call them up and they can set the location for you. And then there is your cam recorders which come in. So being aware of all these different areas where your information, the type of data which these folks are collecting, and then how it is being collected, how it is being used. Looking at the path forward for the businesses, we the when we are looking at even those manufacturers, the first point would be to embed the privacy and security in your project, in the product development phases. We've always seen the product is developed, it's out, and that's when the security and the privacy tangent is being built into it, which is much more ineffective than having security further earlier ahead in the curve and then designing the process which is all inclusive of it. And another thing is make privacy a boardroom agenda. If cybersecurity was your agenda a few years back, privacy should be a concern area now. There are so many upcoming regulations coming up. We have European Union GDPR, Global Data Protection Regulation, which controls and the regulate, which kind of like lists out how personal data can be used and what is the and controls the entire privacy structure around that. Then there's the California Privacy Act. The European Data Protection Board recently did publish the guidelines, which talks about the personal data in the context of connected vehicles. And then there is always the best practices documents coming in from Alliance of Automotive Manufacturers. So this is something which we gotta have to incorporate privacy at the product level, build in a secure system which is more focused around all the tenets of data security, which ensures your confidentiality, integrity, availability. Because once it's secure, then you can enforce the privacy measures by developing a mature consent management practices, giving customers, an options to opt out. You just don't make everything, an opt-in condition, and providing accurate notices, giving them, a scope. That's what GDPR is pretty much all about, ensuring transparency, ensuring the accountability of your information, ensuring that you have control over your data. And last but not the least, to look at data in the entire ecosystem. So the data is not just the data which is coming in from the car, but then it's also going to the manufacturer. There is also going to these different databases that are sitting at. So looking at the entire life cycle, right from collection to how it's being maintained, to stored, all the way to disposal. So this is pretty much it that I have. I'll open the floor to any questions if we have, but that's about everything. Thank you so much.